I think it's taking a little time to go on live, but we can start. Yeah, I think I've already started. Yeah, so I was sharing that this is the 18th in the series, and we have been meeting every week one family or group of children who have done open schooling, homeschooling, unschooling, whatever you want to say it, in many different forms. And a bit about Arohi. It's an open learning community, and it's open for interest, all kinds of interest, all kinds of ages, all kinds of beliefs. So we don't define um, the education in one form. So what if it is homeschooling or unschooling? Even then, if you go through our recording of all 17 sessions or webinars of the previous weeks, you will realize that each family is creating a different definition for themselves for the education. And that's what Arohi brings people together. The whole purpose is to or rather say, I will say the whole uh, the basis of Arohi is that learning, that we all come together because we want to learn many different ways, many different forms, and then community which brings people together, not only to understand interdependence, but to also co-create our life in many different forms. And so before we start with Vineeta, and I'll introduce you to Vineeta, who has been, you can say, the pioneers in India, when maybe many people didn't even know that this concepts exist. She started, and that's what we will listen from her today. And I'm very excited that she is here. Uh, uh, so before we begin with Vineeta, I just want to share that there are lots of terms when we talk about, say, homeschooling or unschooling, or now the terms are road schooling, free schooling, world schooling. So the screen which is there in front of us it's kind of a spectrum, wherein one spectrum is a no structure, no curriculum, completely open, and there are families and there are groups which does that. And then the another spectrum is completely curriculum driven, completely structured, and decided by the people who wants to lead that education for the children. But in between these two ends, there are many different ways of approaching it, and that's what we call it the open learning, where the child or the family together can create their own learning, and we don't need to bind by, say, one definition of education, or even alternate ways of learning. Open learning offers an environment where we can nurture or empower the child, and where the child is the leader. And when we say child is the leader, I will say the family is the leader who's creating the learning for themselves. I just want to show a small little video to you to share that while there are a lot of us in our own ways, in our own families, doing various forms of homeschooling and unschooling. So and that's one possibility, and there are possibility where the group of people coming together and creating the community, and creating that I will say the wonder and the magic in the education for children, that how learning can happen in many different forms. So this video was shot by a child who's wanting to go into the filming, and
connecting with people is amazing.
I like chit-chatting with my friends while eating.
An opportunity to take all the guests around the tour, around the campus.
Currently, I'm working on improving myself so I can play in a club next year.
I get resources and support to fulfill my passion for sketching.
I sketch many things of animals, birds.
In Arohi, I am a guest, and
I can find my space here, pursuing my interest on upcycling.
I drum to express my emotion and it makes me feel lighter. In bird watching, I learn a lot of things. What is color of bird and
I like the time when I spend with the community, playing sports.
I spend time doing projects related to cinematography and video editing.
I like organizing trips in Narohi, Kyunki. Your opportunity is to organize trips.
video making is awesome. It's productive and you get an awesome outcome.
I like to do electrical work. I've put many.
I connect with the planning here, gives me clarity.
I like playing with the cats. I learn crochet and teach others crochet.
எனக்கு சமைக்கிறதுக்கு இங்க ரொம்ப பிடிக்கும்.
All the resources here are new to me to explore.
Yeah, so that's just a glimpse of that what a life can give you while you are learning, and I think I will now I want to invite now Vineeta to share to her journey and how it began. So over to Vineeta. So small little format I just want to share with all the people who are there in this webinar is that we will start with Vineeta's journey, listening to her. Maybe first 15-20 minutes, couple of questions I will to bring her all the learnings which we can have from Vineeta, and we'll open it up for the question answer towards the end of the webinar, and that's all. And even after that, wish to meet or connect with Vineeta, I think Vineeta can share her details also towards the end of the session, or I can also share. Most of you are registered with us, so we can share all the details with you. So yeah, Vineeta, over to you. I think I'll just highlight your video and stop sharing my screen so you are there. Yep, yes, Vineeta. You want to start?
Just a minute.
Can you see us? Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Aditi, for this opportunity to meet so many amazing people here, and to be with you, the amazing work you all do at Arohi. It's really very heartwarming. So coming to how we started, I think when my elder son was born, and as children are growing, we all experience our own children. They are so original and so spontaneous. And often this question used to come to our mind, both my husband and me, that, sometimes if something would happen, children very spontaneously give a very original answer, and exactly the way things are. They don't have to think twice whether it's the right answer or wrong answer. They just say what it is. So what we felt was that this is such a gift that a child is born with, that capacity to be who the child is, the capacity to just be so honest with self and with others. And then the thought, what happens in a classroom when the child has to always gauge what is expected of him, and then mold his or her own behavior according to that expectation. And from the moment we go into that setup, the whole life, the whole child's inner movement becomes oriented towards trying to figure out what is expected of me so that I can fit in and I can stay out of trouble. So this was one of the very, very important thing, and it really ached my heart to think that if this is what is going to happen to my children when they go to school, then I don't want that. The various incidents which I keep sharing, but in nutshell, this was the primary reason, the first thing for which this thought of homeschooling, unschooling came to our mind. So, yeah. So should I continue how we proceeded with that? And yeah, so when we were, when my children were growing up, for a year or two, we were in Cochin, and there was a learning space for 3 to 6 year old children. And when I entered that space, I just felt this is how I had always imagined a learning space to be like that. So for a year or two, we were there. And after that, we got transferred. And that is when we decided that once we go away, my husband's job was transferable. So we decided that when we go away from Cochin, we will not send our children to school because we wanted them to be who they are. So once in Assam, that's where we got transferred next. Once in Assam, we started learning together at home. And I often say
How
that.
How old were the children at that time, Vineeta?
At that time, my elder son was around 6, and the younger one was about a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So actually, they have never gone to a traditional school. They went to that preschool, which was very, very different, and I was very lucky that I discovered that space. And then once in Assam, we were at home, and like we have our own ideas of how we will educate our children. Even in the process of homeschooling, there was, through my own conditioning, there was a certain way I thought we will proceed. So I developed some projects, and having done this project for a couple of days with my elder son for 2-3 days, I asked him, okay, are you enjoying it? He said yes. And then he asked me, Mama, what am I learning out of it? He was about 6.5, 7. He wasn't, his 7th birthday was not over yet. So this kid asks me, but what am I learning out of it? And that was something that hit me, that, the very reason we didn't want him to go to school was that he engages with things that make sense to him, that he really enjoys, that he finds meaning in. And he lives life in connection with himself and with things around him. And I'm trying to create something where he's wondering, what am I even learning from this engagement? And I think that was the end of homeschooling and beginning of unschooling. And in the process of unschooling, before I go into that explanation, I would like to share with you that I'm talking about 90s. When
that is what I was wondering, that how did you get that, and how, maybe that if you can remember that internal process which happened.
Yeah. So internal process, as part of internal process, I have already shared that, watching them growing so beautifully, with so much of energy, so much of enthusiasm. The thought of putting them behind a desk was it was killing me basically. And the other thing, I think sometimes we come across certain things in life at the right time, which is a blessing that universe provides us with. So that was, one was that learning space where we went for 2 years. Then I came across a magazine in which there was an article about 2 or 3 families who were in India who were homeschooling. So there was one family who she had taken her 3 children out of school, and within 6 months, some 8 or 10 more children joined them, and it became a small learning space. And they were doing very well. There was another family I remember. Their son was a drummer, and he wanted to take drumming as a profession. And somewhere in class 7th or 8th, they took the child out of school. And then there was this conversation about when he's ready, he will start preparing for his exams and write national open school exam. So that, and there was one more family which I don't remember the details of, but there were 3 families. And I think that article was very, very powerful. That gave me a lot of confidence that, if it can be done, if anyone can do it, that means it's possible. And as we go ahead, we will figure our way out. We are creating a new path. And if we put our one foot forward, we will figure out where to put our next foot. So that is how this whole journey has been. We have figured out each step as we have proceeded on this journey. But there was a faith, there was a trust that when we start walking on a path, that path will open up, it will show itself to us. So I think that was a sheer blind faith, you can call it, or coming from some experience of life. I don't know from where it came, but that is what kept us going, and that is what helped me take that decision.
Yeah, maybe you can talk a little more that how after project, then how did it moved ahead for you, and this reminding me of Asabri's story, but then I think I'll keep it with myself. I want to listen to you today, and I think a lot of people are there to listen to you.
Yeah.
So
then
yeah, I just want to acknowledge Sumi is here. Sumi is also one of the unschooler, and I think one day we should listen to her also. And she's reinforcing that the faith is important. Sumi has a very interesting story, which I think will bring it one of the webinar. So I just want to acknowledge Vineeta that she's saying faith is important, and
yes, and it's so nice to have you here, Sumi.
Yeah, truly.
Her story is amazing. You all need to listen to her story. Yeah. So once this whole my own thing of that all preparing for projects and all was then gone out of the window, and I think that's when our real journey started. Just living together, following whatever came up in any given moment, following children. They were the real teachers. I was just following them. And, one of the things which I often say that what did I do in those years was keeping my eyes and ears open and keeping my mouth shut, which was the most difficult thing to do. Because we have our own conditioning.
Yeah.
Even, it's very interesting that intellectually we see something with great clarity. But conditioning is much, much deeper than our intellect. Conditioning covers our intelligence.
Yeah.
So there's a differentiate between intellect and intelligence. So intellect is this mental process which comes from our conditioning, which comes from, our experience, good or bad, we make certain decisions. And intelligence is pure life. So when our own conditioning starts playing, even if intellectually we understand, like it's my experience that even when I intellectually understood something very clearly, there was still something in my body that I experienced some discomforts, which was a part of my conditioning. And I think I'm very blessed that in those moments, I understood that this is my internal movement. It has nothing to do with children. And this is something for me to explore. Even if I'm anxious, when I'm anxious, that is not the time when I take action. That is the time first I understand my anxiety. And then when I'm able to keep my anxiety aside, and when I'm able to look at children just for what they are doing and who they are, then I can engage. So it doesn't mean that I didn't engage. There was a lot of engagement, but the engagement was this clear separation between my own conditioning and what is happening in the moment.
Yeah, so Vineeta, I want to pause you here and I think reinforce this point again. What you have shared is that how even though intellectually we are in agreement with something what we want to do, but then something is stopping us. And I can see in the participant list, some of the parents are there who are in principle agreeing to that, they want to give space to the child or to go this path, but somewhere this uncomfortable feeling and then anxiety sometimes takes over. So I'm sure listening to you can relate that how we all are, or similar paths or similar stories, or ups and downs in how we have taken up. Yes, please go ahead, Vineeta. Indu is
Yeah.
also saying that, yeah, uncomfortable feeling of following the preconditioning. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it was children, I feel often while homeschooling, unschooling our children, as well as I have worked with many other children in certain learning spaces, and I've found that children are beautiful. They have an inborn, innate plan according to which they unfold if we create a space that holds them. It's us adults who need to really learn and unlearn our conditioning. So most of the times, if I was able to keep my conditioning out of it, then my engagement with them also became very matter of fact,
Yeah.
Devoid of anxiety, devoid of fear, devoid of anger, devoid of coercion. And it became a clear communication where they could see what I'm saying and I could see what they're saying. And it was a very clearly a spiritual journey for me, because I'm I was shedding my parts bit by bit, and my effort was to, as much as possible, they don't collect those unhealthy parts. you know Children do get conditioned. We will get conditioned in whatever environment we grow up. For example, children growing up in Arohi are getting conditioned in a certain way.
Yeah.
Children growing with me, when my children grew up with me, they got conditioned in a certain way just because of who I was as a parent. And the kind of space we create conditions children, but how can we keep unhealthy conditioning out? I think that has been the whole of journey. Then quickly, I would just cover that, we followed this free space of free exploration. We would go for walks in the rains. We would play football. We would climb trees. We traveled a lot. We explored a lot. A whole lot of mathematics we learned through playing cricket. you know,
Those were the days, cricket days.
yeah, 1999 World Cup, right? 1999 or 2000?
I have no idea.
Yeah, this World Cup, which children watched the entire World Cup. They created flags of different countries. They read a little bit about each country from which their favorite teams were coming. And they then played their own mini series by themselves, and they learned a whole lot of mathematics. What is average, what is speed, what is percentage, and whatever terms that came up in cricket, they would come and ask me, what does that mean? I would sometimes explain to them, sometimes I will show them, and they would go back to play. And I also always played with them. We were all playing together. So a whole lot of mathematics came from there. So by the time they were about 11, 12, at that time, in their respective times, I had this conversation with them about that, if you want to write exam at some point of time, then we need to slot some time looking at basic concepts. I think by the time they were 11, 12. So then we started spending an hour or so in a day just going through some basic concepts, and then they started preparing for their exams when they were about 14, wrote their first exam when they were 16.
You're talking about the 10th, they did it.
10th, yeah. 10th was their first exam. They had never written an exam before that. And then they went to the Valley School for their 11th and 12th. They both thoroughly enjoyed it because it was academics is not the main thing in Valley School. There was so much of exposure. They went for Himalayan trek. They would go to Kaigal, which is a forest reserve, which Valley School maintains and works with tribals in that area. So there was, forest, what do you say, landscaping in the Valley School. So art, there was a whole lot of things that children got exposed to in Valley School, and then they went to college. And in between, when we were in Delhi, when my elder son was about 11, he started expressing that he wants to learn with children of his own age group. And that's when in Delhi, he went to an alternative school for 2-3 years. And then again, he wrote his exam privately from home. Elder son wrote National Open School, and the younger one wrote IGCSE. And then they entered the mainstream. Yeah.
Yeah. So till they appear for 10th, both of them through NIOS and IGCSE, they were, apart from 1 or 2 years in between, they were on their own and learning on their own. So I also want to bring one point, Vineeta, to share, is that you mentioned that at the age of 11 or 12, when they showed some inclination towards the examination, you started with 1 hour and all. Before that, you ever had any anxiety that, oh my, the whole world around my children are learning a whole lot of other subjects they are getting engaged into, while my children are getting engaged into watching the World Cup? What were your...
No, I didn't have that kind of anxiety, but yes, there was one kind of anxiety which I would like to share. That, when we started homeschooling, and then I keep using certain terms which don't mean anything for us, because it's just that when we were learning together at home, because if we look
family learning.
Yeah, family learning together, because we did homeschooling. From today's context, we did homeschooling, unschooling, road schooling, farm schooling, travel schooling, everything we did at different points of times.
Yeah.
So it wasn't one thing followed, and it wasn't something being followed. We just responded to what children wanted, and according to our own comfort level, whatever came up. Because at that time, there were no concepts around it.
Yeah.
So whatever comfort level we had, we just proceeded accordingly. So I was talking about my anxiety was when in the initial years, about a year or two of being together at home, I started getting a little, I was beginning to get a little anxious, and I found myself kind of, coercing them a bit about, okay, let's at least write a diary, or at least let's read something from the books, and let's do a project. And there was a lot of resistance from children. And I was getting a little, anxious. I could see my anxiety coming up. And I'm sure at some times I also got upset when their plans didn't match what I wanted. But then I took a step back, and when I started reflecting on what is going on with me, I realized that actually my anxiety was not that, they won't learn and they won't, then what will happen to them in future. That was never my anxiety. I just knew that whatever they are learning, it will just give them a very strong footing, because they are learning to be themselves, and there can be nothing more powerful than that. My anxiety was that if they put something, and it's very funny, I'm laughing now, that if they put something on paper, if they create something, at least I can show it to friends and family that, we are not wasting our time. See, they are producing some work. So that was a very powerful insight for me, in that, how it was my difficulty in dealing with the pressure I was experiencing from family and friends. It was not about my children.
Yeah.
And that insight was very powerful. I never went into that place, that space, after I realized that. And that was very powerful for me.
Yeah, and I think did that change the response of children when you were approaching differently?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, okay. So I think although you have shared in your write-up about how did they, they went to different institutes after their 12th. Can you again share their journey?
Yeah, I will. So first, before that, my elder son went to this alternative school in Delhi. And when we came to Bangalore in 2004, I had started a small learning space with a friend, which was again a few families coming together, more on homeschooling concept, like Arohi. It was that kind of a space. Uh, I'm sure if we look at details, there will be differences in both the spaces, but the concept was similar.
Yeah.
Um, and me and my younger son were a part of that space till for about 5 years, and then we moved out of there. So both of them at their respective times went to Valley School for 11th and 12th. Then my elder son did engineering, and during his engineering, he was very, right from the beginning, very interested in outdoors.
Mm-hmm.
So engineering, and he was very clear that he doesn't want to leave academic stream unless he was, okay, there's a question, does Valley School refer to the Rishi Valley School in Bangalore? Valley School is in Bangalore and Rishi Valley is in Madanapalli in Andhra. These are two separate institutions run by Krishnamurthy Foundation. Yeah.
So I want to also acknowledge that Maitri is also sharing that she is going through the same, what you were sharing a little bit before about the anxiety. So Maitri, we have different kinds of spaces in which we deal ourselves with. Yeah. So go
Yes.
ahead, Vineeta. Yeah.
Yeah. So my elder son was very clear that he is interested in many things, but he hadn't pinpointed one particular thing he wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And he wasn't sure whether he's going academic way or he's going according to his other interests. So he said that till he decides, he will not leave academic stream.
Okay.
So he went in for engineering, and during those years, he explored lots of things. He explored theater, then, ecotourism, adventure sports, trekking, cinema, all those different kinds of things he explored. And after his engineering, he took a gap year, which extended into 2-3 years, gap years, and extended into his profession, basically. So during these years, he explored many things, and now he's a wildlife filmmaker. He makes films, wildlife films for Nat Geo, for BBC, Animal Planet, and all those projects he gets. And very recently, one of the projects he and his colleague have done independently was bought by Nat Geo Wild and that was telecast in only right now in the month of August. That was an independent project they did, which Nat Geo Wild bought. And there is another film that he has made, which has been nominated for Green Oscars and Jackson Wild Media Award. So, and he has never gone to a filmmaking school. He has learned just by doing it.
Those gap years and
Yes.
okay. So did he do
Yeah.
internship, or he was just on his own all these 2-3 years?
So he did internship with Felis. Are you aware of Felis? Sandesh Kudur?
Not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So he did an internship with them for about 2 months, and after that they asked him to join them as their employee.
Okay.
So then he worked with them for about 2 years, and now he's an independent filmmaker. He's still working for them sometimes. Like, he has a good relationship with them because as a freelancer he still does some of their projects, but he's not working with them anymore as their employee. He's an independent filmmaker. He and one of his colleagues, they both do this together.
So, Vinta, you want to share about the younger one? I think we haven't taken their names even, both the boys.
So my younger son is Nitya Sood, Nitye, because his name is a little, people normally find it hard to pronounce. And the younger one is Nikhil. So Nikhil did his BSc. He was very interested in physics right from the beginning. He did, after 12th, he went for BSc Honors Physics in Delhi University. Then he took a gap year. He worked with a scientist who was working on quantum physics, some research on quantum physics. For 3-4 months, he worked with that scientist. Then he traveled a lot. He started reading people like Noam Chomsky and, that sociology, education, philosophy kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And he got thoroughly interested in that. Then he did his Young India Fellowship from Ashoka University. Then he went to Delhi University, D School of Economics, and he did sociology, MA Sociology from there. And he is a purely academic guy. Right now, he is doing his PhD from City University of New York. He just joined this year.
Yeah. So Vineeta, you are sharing that children are now showing purely academic oriented, or rather the research oriented. The young one, Nikhil, is showing. So when they were growing up, before they did their 10th and kind of a thing, what were their thought process?
Thought process with regard
to what they were doing. They were not going to school. They were learning on their own with the family. How did they?
Yeah. So see, they were very, very happy and contented till they were about 14 years.
Okay.
Even when like they would play with other children in the evening, and sometimes children will say something which was not very nice, and they would come home and talk to me about it. But it never came to a point where they said, oh no, that means we are ruining our life. That means we are not wasting our time. We are not doing anything. So we want to go back to school. That never happened.
Do they say now?
Sorry?
Do they say now that?
No. But I am just coming to that. But their thing was that, Mama, they don't understand what we are doing. We are having so much of fun. We are exploring. We are really enjoying it. We are learning so many things. And my elder son used to say, I want to do something to help them see what I'm doing. And my younger son would say, but why do you bother? So that was it. Yeah, now when we talk about things, they do feel between the year 14 to 16, when they were purely preparing for their exams, they do feel that it's very essential to have a peer group at that time, and they missed it. And they do miss it. They feel that has been not having a peer group at that age has been a kind of a loss, because that is the age when there's so many things that they learn from each other. They explore in a very different way when they are with their peers, as compared to exploring alone. And now homeschoolers have peers, because there's so many people homeschooling. At our time, they didn't have any peers.
Yeah.
So they were very, very lonely in those years. But before 14 years, they never, even now when we talk about it, they say, oh, it was great till 14. It was only after those 2 years they feel that, it would have really helped them.
Helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. And they did have peer group before that, because it was a different kind of thing. When you're preparing for exam, when you have other children, or when you're learning something very seriously, not only exam, when you're exploring something seriously, to explore it with others of your age group has a very different flavor as compared to when you do it on your own, just by yourself.
Yeah. So Vineeta, I think before we open up for the people to ask more questions to you, can you also little brief us about your support to homeschoolers group and other initiatives which you have, and then we can take up the questions all together.
Yeah. So far as my support to homeschooling, unschooling families is concerned, most of the times I get calls, and I just speak to families.
Wait. I think yours is muted.
Yeah. So recently a lot more calls have started coming ever since lockdown has started. So now I find it very difficult to speak to each one individually, because there are so many calls. So now I have started, when there are 7-8 people together, then I hold a session.
Okay.
So that's how I do it. Then today I'm talking with you. 2 weeks ago, I was talking with Ashita from the tribe. I spoke to another group about 2 months ago. So like that, these are the opportunities where I share. And personally also, individually also, when someone needs support, I support them. I work basically with parents, more with parents, because I haven't come to a point to working with children, but I would love to create some space for children if there is such a need. Yeah, this is what it is: individual coaching, mentoring kind of a thing, talking about their
if you're comfortable, you can put your number in the chat window, so if people just want to quickly make a note, and I think we can open up for the people. Pradeep is asking so let's see, we'll try. Pradeep, you want to come on mic and then see if that helps to interact with Vineeta?
So I would just, one moment before that, I would like to say, this is my number. I have put it on the, it has come to you privately.
Yeah. Can you?
Yeah. So I live in the UAE. So if anyone wants to get in touch with me, please send me a WhatsApp message, and then we can figure out a way to talk.
Yeah, sure.
I don't pick calls on this number because I'm not in India right now.
Okay. Yeah. So Pradeep, you want to come on mic. Meanwhile, I think others, if you want to come on mic, you can raise your hand or put it in the chat window so we can take up the questions from Vineeta. While people are putting up their questions, Vineeta, anything, something which you distinctly remember about your whole journey?
About?
I think Pradeep is on. Yeah, about your journey. Maybe we can share it later. Pradeep, you want to go ahead? I think your voice is not clear. Yeah, we are not able to hear you.
sure. So,
No, we can't hear you, Pradeep.
okay, I'll chat.
Yeah, please. Yeah. So while people are putting, if you can share something which you remember while we have questions. Aruna is talking about the sibling, and if the children don't have the sibling, will they feel lonely? Aruna says, my daughter is very social and wants to be constantly with friends. She's 6 and she doesn't go to traditional school. Montessori she goes to, but she's still feeling like unschooling as a way forward. So you want to share anything, Vineeta?
Yeah, see, often what happens is, children do have lots of opportunities to play with other children in the evenings, for example. Now, all our children played a lot with other children, even not only with children. We had this, we were living in a township for about 4 or 5 years in between, and life in township was actually very good.
Social, yeah.
Very, very social, because there were just some 25, 26 families. So we would play together. There was no distinction of children and adults playing. We would all play together. And when you want to homeschool your children, there will be some see, whatever decision we take, there will be challenges in that. There will be certain kind of challenges when our children go to school. There are certain kind of challenges when we stay at home.
Yeah, so we have to choose between which one we want to.
Yeah. So what are the benefit? For example, what are the pros that you really value, which you don't want to give up? And what are the cons you can deal with? And what are the cons you don't want to deal with? For example, I never wanted to deal with forcing my children to sit and do their homework.
Mm-hmm.
I was much happier putting in a lot of work in creating a community for them, in creating a learning space at home for them, creating opportunities for them where they could explore and learn, which was a lot more work than sending them to school in one way. But I would have died myself if I had to really force them to sit and do a work which doesn't make any sense to them or to me.
Yeah, so quite insightful, Vineeta. What you're sharing is that what matters to me.
Yeah.
And then I think I can deal with all other, whether you call it challenges or whatever comes on our way when we are on our journey, we can take care of that. But what matters is what I value, and then for that value, I think quite insightful for all of us. The social thing keeps coming the moment we talk about the homeschooling, but somewhere this is a huge myth that school-going children have a lot of social.
Exactly. Yeah, and what is socialization? I often ask this question because socialization is not sitting with other children and just sitting with other children and trying to do something very directed.
Yeah.
Socialization also comes from your connection with yourself. So if the child is not connected to the self and is trying to make relationships outside all the time, that is a very unhealthy socialization. That's a lot of dependence on the outer world. And unfortunately, our education system makes us so outwardly approval seeking and outwardly relationship seeking.
Yeah, so I think there is a lot of myth also. If the child has need to talk with different people, we translate into the talk to or whatever the social connection with the peer age group, while the child just has the need to, maybe if you call that child in this webinar, maybe interact with Vineeta and then ask lots of questions.
Exactly. So we have to be their companions.
Yeah.
Which in any case we are, but very often we say we want to outsource that. And that's where the problem is. If we can stay their companions as we are, it's very easy.
Yeah, and I think they figure out their own way. They figure out whom to connect with, whom to approach. Yeah, yeah. So Indu is asking that they shifted travel from hills to Delhi. What a transition, Indu.
Yeah.
Indu is saying my son is in eighth and not able to give his best. So she thinks the homeschool. She's asking, would homeschooling be his ultimate answer, enjoying his various activities?
Yeah. See, this is a decision which each family takes. What we can do is, if you really want to explore it, I'm sure Aditi can help you. I can help you to really figure out what we were talking about a moment ago, that what do you want? We can explore that.
And I from sorry, Vineeta, you go ahead.
From there, the answers can come about what your child, what you want to give to your child, and also because your child is in eighth, now you can have a conversation with your child, and give him exposure of lots of possibilities. Educate yourself, know your inner movement, where your blocks are, where your conditioning is, and where your real essence is. And out of this process, a decision can come up.
Yeah. So I also want to add to this, Vineeta, what you are sharing is that, go back to your child and start the conversation with the child. And I think into the same question which you have put it up, type it and then share with your child again, and then have a conversation around it that, how do we, what is that we want to go ahead. And the second point, Vineeta, which you brought, I think I want to little reinforce is that sometimes children are also, because they have only seen this world of conventional education, most of them going to the school, and they are not exposed to. So what Vineeta is talking about is exposure of that, how there are different ways of doing something, how I think that's where either the travel or connecting with people, or bringing their stories back home, that how things are happening, can also give a little perspective to our own children, that it's not necessary for me to go through what I'm going through. There are different pathways for me which I can explore. So anything, Vineeta, you want to add to this?
So yeah, that's very, very important. And many of these spaces, for example, if you look at Arohi, and I know a couple of more spaces which are very open. You can go, stay there, see what's happening. You can spend a week, you can spend 2 weeks in conversation with them and really see what is happening. And you can take your child also to these spaces. Am I right, Aditi?
Yeah, so I want to add to this, Vineeta, is that not only the learning spaces, I think different kind of spaces you take.
Yeah. Yes. And SAM, learning societies, unconference.
Farming places,
yes,
places, lot of different way the people are coming from different walks of life. There are different, communities which are working on the different kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So I want to add, before we started Arohi itself, I think we must have visited more than 30 places where we travel, and then none of them we have replicated in our space, but then I think there is a lot of learning from those spaces which we carry with ourselves. And then so again, I will also add to what Vineeta is saying. Don't restrict yourselves to only say exposure to your child to schooling or non-schooling spaces. Expand your exposure. What kind of interest or the inclination which your child is adding. Vineeta, you were saying something more. Please go ahead.
No, I was just saying what you said, that there are so many families who are doing fabulous work. Even in the cities, there are groups. I know that in Bangalore, there are so many groups of homeschooling, unschooling parents who meet periodically, who meet once a week or twice a week. In Pune, there are such communities. I came to know in Delhi also there are groups. In Chennai there are groups. I'm sure Sumi will be able to tell us something about Udaipur and Ahmedabad. And if we research more, you will find these groups. Go be a part of those group gatherings. Spend some time talking to other parents who are doing it. Let your child play with those children. Farming places, art-based places. Just go and spend some time there. There are so many different places today.
So this
It's a work. It's a different kind of engagement with your world, with the child's world, to explore and come to a decision in a very different way.
This reminds me, in one of these gatherings, I met a family who's from Jamshedpur. I don't know how many of you have heard this name. And that was the only family in that city who was doing homeschooling. And they were there in one of the gathering of unschooling and homeschooling spaces. So yeah, I think even if you like Vineeta started long back where there were none of these things were there, but things were possible and are possible. So I just want to, in continuation to what Pradeep is asking, is there a list? So Vineeta, you want to talk? An hour back, we were in a in another webinar, a kind of a meeting where we were talking about the same thing, that many of us are working independently in different places, and then I think some of us have started this thing, and the need that we need to come together, create a collective, and then bring all those things possible for many of you who want to start your journey. So Vinta, you want to add something?
Yeah, so exactly what Aditi is saying, we are in the process of forming a collective where there are so many different families, different individuals who are doing work on their own. And this is a collective where all these people are coming together. It's basically pooling of resources, where once you go to that space, you can come across, I won't say all, but many of the resources, and this list also keeps getting updated. So you can, on one platform, you will get to know so many different kinds of things that are happening.
Yeah.
And from there, you can pick and choose. You can talk to people, you can visit them, you can, a whole lot of possibilities are there.
Yeah. So Pradeep, we have also felt that gap, especially with the people who wants to start new. For them, we need to offer in written now after our experience of so many years. So some of us have come together and started that process, and hopefully you will get to see the bigger picture of this whole community, where the different people are talking about, or into this kind of a thing. It's not because of the COVID many of us started homeschooling. I think we are most pre-COVID era, where we were questioning. We began questioning the education and started our journey. And Sumi is also adding that there's a beautiful group of homeschoolers and unschoolers in Ahmedabad. You can so the Pradeep, maybe I can share that there's a little list, curated list, which we currently
sure, that will be great,
of different homeschoolers, unschoolers, different groups, different Facebook groups which are there. We have tried little compiling while this collective work is going on, so I can share that with you.
And to add to that, see, when, for example, when we were unschooling, homeschooling our own children, we were also on a learning journey, which we still are. Learning never stops. But now many of us have, through our own learning, our own realizations, we can support people who are starting.
Yeah.
So that kind of information will also be there, in what way each one of us, whom you can talk to when you want certain kind of information or certain kind of exploration. So all that information, both for parents, for children, for the whole process of education. So it will be a multifaceted space where you will find many different kinds of information.
Yeah.
Online, offline, both.
And I want to add to this that this collective is initiated by a young girl, and with
Yes.
It was so amazing that many of us with so many years of experience, and this 23-24-year old girl sitting with us, and then leading us, and I was feeling so excited to.
Yes. Very exciting.
Be led by her, that now it's in your hands. We will just support whatever we can do from the back. hand. So, yep. One more question, Divya's question. We have not taken. Vineeta is that she's asking in the preparation of 10th and IGCSE and NIUS, how did they go about? Did they go through any tuition or anything? Vida, you want to share?
Okay. Yeah. So when they till 14, it was primarily me, and then I told you that when my younger son was going through that phase, we had a community of people which supported these children. From 14 to 16, when they were preparing for exam, there were some things that I worked with them, and there were especially maths and English was for which I got a tutor. They went to someone else to learn from exam point of view. In terms of their relationship with numbers, quantities, all of that, I think it has happened in so many different ways in the process of growing up. Not in a very traditional how we learn mathematics, not in that way, but as I told you, learning a whole lot of cricket, learning from cricket. They wanted to map something, or they wanted to cook something, they wanted to create woodwork, creating different kinds of things. It requires a lot of mathematical spatial understanding. Even if you don't define it as maths, it's a lot of spatial mathematical understanding when you are looking at proportions, when you are looking at how you place one thing with respect to the other, how you place your structure within a space you have decided. So this is a lot of sensing, learning a lot of mathematics through sensing, which is very, very important. And these things, you cannot have a timetable for these things. If you can create a space which is exploratory space, which provides lots of opportunities for children to engage, children can pick so many different projects through which they can learn many different things.
Yeah, and I think so many of these, what we call is that unconscious learning happens without us designing that, and many of the time we miss to pick up those things, and possibly have stopped valuing those unconscious learning, what goes through. So Indu, you have shared quite a lot of the initiative which you have started. Maybe you can just, because this will go away in the chat window, maybe you can share that with me in WhatsApp, and I can share with Maitri and Archana of Asmakam, who have started this collective initiative, and that would be great to come together. And this let me see if I have missed out any other. Yeah, Vanchika is asking to you, Vineeta, that you mentioned that there was time that when your plans didn't match with their plans. Did that happen often? Or did this happens often, and is a way to deal with every time differently?
I don't know how to define it, that how often it happened. It's, when it happens, as long as I hold on to my ideas. But in terms of dealing with it, I think it's always one thing that stays constant is always going back to from where my anxiety or my need is coming in terms of what they should be doing. And whatever they are doing, how do I view that? What exactly is happening there?
Yeah.
One of the, even when we feel children are not doing anything, we feel it because they are not doing anything that we see it as valuable. It's not that they're not doing anything.
Yeah.
They're not doing the things that we put in that category that we think is valuable.
We want to see action, and we want to see some results out of those things. So,
yeah. And also, suppose children are not doing anything for an extended period of time, I think that's great.
They will
the capacity to not do anything for a long period of time, and through that the value of boredom, and when they get bored, how to deal with it, and what to do with their time, how to engage with their time. One thing I want to bring up, which I'm quite, what do you say? I'm a very old school in that matter, which is their exposure to media. One of the things is because media is so easily available, and if children are just 24/7 engaging with media for years together, I would not be comfortable with that. Each family will have their own way of looking at it, but I have gone through this with my own children. I have engaged with them when they watched. There have been two distinct phases. One is when they just wanted to watch. I got upset. I wanted them to stop it. They didn't stop. I started watching with them, and something very beautiful came out of that when I started watching with them. So that was purely about my anxiety and how I dealt with it. The second time, when my husband had gone abroad on his work assignment, and that was another time when they started watching television a lot. And we are very lucky that at that time we didn't have as many gadgets as we have today. So that was, from that point of time, we didn't have to worry about things today people have to worry about, or the kind of exposure children get today. But still, there were issues. So when my husband had gone away, at that time, they again got very engrossed in television watching. And that was when I felt that, they were very passively watching. And they were trying to avoid their real feelings of missing their father and substituting it with watching TV. And that was when I kept engaging with them. And after a point, I was able to convince them that let's not have the cable. We cut off the cable. And then something very beautiful came. They were a little frustrated. They didn't want it, but they were okay. They said, okay, we want to experiment for a month and then we will see. So I said, okay. But for that, after a month, they didn't want to have it back. They said only when they were fond of watching tennis or football matches, and when those tournaments are going on, cricket, those tournaments are going on, we would get the cable back and then we will cut it off. So that was something which kept coming back again and again. But otherwise, I think I also find that when I wanted them to follow my agenda, I actually limited their exploration. When I followed their exploration, children start with something just from one point, and in how many different directions they can expand it, we can't even begin to imagine. We only limit that exploration when we become anxious about what they are doing.
Yeah, so I also want to bring that point is that nothing is static. It's not that if something has happened today, so what I forgot the name. What Vanshika is asking. So in a way, there is no one way to deal that with every time, because the things are different. Even the same TV or cable thing will come again. Vineeta will do it differently and connect with them differently, because they are different. They have moved away from where they were. We have moved away from where they were.
Yes,
it's a constant.
Yeah, and interesting thing is, it's not that for one problem, definitely when it reappears at some stage another time, you can't use the same solution for that. That's one thing. For one child,
different.
It will be different for the other. Like between the two of them, it was very different.
True.
And when we are really pausing to listen to them, we can see the difference.
Yeah.
Very often we don't see the difference because we are trying to solve the problem. We are not trying to understand what's going on.
And Persil, we put all, not only children, everybody in the same container, and then find the solution after that.
Yeah.
Pradeep is bringing. Yeah.
There was something in my mind. If it comes back, I'll share.
Sure.
Suparna has raised hand.
Yeah, I'll take it. I think Pradeep has been trying for a long. Finally, he has typed it. Is I think what he's talking about is that kids, when exploring on their interests, they specialize. If they are, their areas are niche, and then it's difficult to find enough resources and support to help them. Do you think it will delay or whatever? It's a risk or losing their interest or worse effect on them? Do you want to share anything, or have you faced?
This is very interesting. There are so many things they want to do. Sometimes they want to do something so badly, but after doing it just for one day, they feel, oh, no, 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 this is not what I want, and they drop it. Then there will be things they want to do so badly, but they don't get an opportunity to do it, but it stays with them. And whenever they get an opportunity, they engage with it. As parents also, when we see an interest they are getting in a certain things, what kind of resources we can provide. And after a stage, for example, like for my children, after they went to school and college, I have never guided them, me or my husband, because we have no a filmmaker, wildlife filmmaker, we have no knowledge about. We don't know how to go about in that profession. After a stage, they just carve their own path. Whatever they get interested in, they find the information, they discuss it with us, then figure it out. But we are not driving them. They are their own masters. They are taking the lead in whatever they want to do. Yeah. And they just figure their way out. But that happens because they have learned from a very beginning how to figure their way out. When we are constantly guiding and creating we are always giving solutions to them instead of engaging with what they want to create and supporting them in creating that, then they become dependent. If we are engaging with them and figuring out to help them figure out what they want to do and support them in creating what they want to create, that's a life skill that they learn.
Yeah. So Vineeta, what you're talking about is the empowering them rather than, bringing the whole solution for them on the plate and then, So Pradeep, I also want to add to this is that in my experience of working with children in Arohi for so many years, is that not a single child has been rejected by anybody that no, I don't know, I can't teach this to a child. There was a child, 12-year-old child came to me and said, I want to learn parkour. And that's the word new for me. I had no idea what does the parkour means. And he explained to me the parkour means jumping from the wall. And I said, oh, that kind of profession also exists. And we together worked it out, and we found that there are groups in Bangalore who meet periodically and do the training for parkour. And so I think there is nothing like niche in this world. For everything, everybody is available. It's just that we need to approach them. Anybody whom we have approached has never said no to us. A child who wanted to learn baking, we were not the right person to he wanted to learn at the professional level. He went to the bakery next to our campus. Our campus is in a village. I'm not even talking about the city. He went to a bakery in our village and then say, can I come every Friday to your place and then learn how do you bake all these goodies, some of the things which he liked from that bakery. So he wanted to learn from them as well. And they said, yeah, most welcome, come. And then so I think what I'm adding, and then what Vineeta is saying, is that possibly it's again a myth that they will lose out on something. Maybe they will not.
Yeah. It's our own conditioned way of thinking, because that is what we have seen, that is what we see around us. And all the problems that we see in the system are because of the way the system is structured. When children get a different kind of growing up experience, a different kind of learning experience, their problems will not come will not match with the kind of problems that come from mainstream or from a system which is more top down.
Yeah.
So their problems will be different, and they will know whom to approach. I'm not saying that as parents or as adults in their lives we should not, we support them, we talk about it, we discuss, okay, what are the different options, what can you do when you want to do this or that, okay, maybe I know this person, maybe you can call that person, or this person can give you some reference, or in that way, like when you talk to a friend, how do you engage is how you engage with your children and figure things out, basically.
Yeah. And I think within internet, the whole world now is at our disposal, and the search of the people, connecting with people in that sense has become much more easier and approachable, and kids can like we have a child who's just 14-year-old, and then he's doing trading. He's actually in the stock market doing trading and earning and losing money for last 6 months now. And he approached one of the CEO of the company to guide him with understanding the business. And then he said, yeah, most welcome, I can share my knowledge with you happily, kind of a thing, because possibly they also don't get that kind of an audience who will engage them in any different way.
Yeah, I was going to say that, it's almost like I have never come across someone who would not want to engage with children. When children are engaging and asking some genuine questions from a very deep and interesting and interested space, it's a surprise for adults also, and they very happily engage with them. It's a very different kind of experience for adults when children really, approach it from that point of view, from that space.
Yeah. So I think that brings us towards the end of the questions, and the time is also 6:20. Before we close, Vineeta, you want to just share anything from your whole journey, something which you would like to share, especially the one who wants to either start or have started, or this journey, and something you want to share?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. One is, when we as parents, when you as parents, you feel anxious, you have your questions, you have your fears about the child's future. Those are your anxieties and your fears. Let's explore those. We are there. You can explore it with us. There's so many people. Aditi, I am there. Sumi is there. Dola, Urmila, Vidhi, Archana. Like, there are many people.
Yeah.
With whom you can explore that. And if you can stay conscious of that this is my fear, my anxiety, let me understand it. And if we can really stop from projecting it on our children, that will be a great step. I'm not saying that we should not engage with children and we should not say no and we should not do anything with them. That's not the point. It's important to say no when it needs to be said. It's important to engage with them. I'm saying not from a space of fear and anxiety.
Yeah.
So when we have fears, when we have anxiety, when we have a doubt, when we feel unsure or confused, explore it with the community so that you can engage with your child when you're free of, or at least you have seen that, okay, not free of, but when you know that, okay, this is a part I need to deal with, that I can park it. I have resources to deal with it. I can park it and I can engage with my child without this layer. That will be very helpful for the child and for you. Have a community of people with whom you engage. Create a community for your children. And again, trust the process of life. I think that's the biggest gift. Life is the biggest gift. It has the capacity to unfold and blossom. And if we can trust that process, that in itself is amazing.
And as you define university of life.
Yeah. University. This is a university of life through which we learn. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's so wonderful, Vineeta, to listen to you. Although I've known to you, or I know you for a long now, but anytime such kind of a conversation brings a lot of joy for me, and I'm sure the people who are listening to you. So my virtual hug to you and all the listeners who are spending time to understand. I think that's quite commendable, that uh, uh, just trying to understand by listening to different people and connecting with
Yes.
different people, that how much you want to bring changes. And then so thank you, all of you. Thanks, Vineeta, and that's all.
Thank you so much. I thoroughly enjoyed, Aditi, speaking to you and to everyone here.
Yeah.
Wonderful questions. I wish you all the best on your journey, and you are not alone. So just seek out.
Yeah, connect with us, connect with
Yes.
Vineeta. I'll share whatever resources we have collected. I'll share all that with you, and hope in coming months, coming years, we have a much bigger space and the base for all the newcomers
Yes.
to start their journey. Yeah. Thank you everyone, and
Bye, Vineeta ji.
Thank you. Bye.